Okay, Oscar fans, it is Oscar weekend. Finally, we are here. And if you want to have the best predictions, that means you've got to get those categories right for best animated short, live action short, and documentary short. Those are really, really tricky. And we, Gold Derby, are here to help you. We're going to start with best animated short. Paul Sheehan, our executive editor. I'm Tom O'Neill, the editor. And Paul, we're all in consensus about what's going to win here, so you give us the overview on our top pick.
Well, we're saying that Sanjay's Super Team is going to win, which is from Pixar, and it's screened before The Good Dinosaur, so it's certainly the most well-known of the five. I am only a little hesitant about it because a couple of years ago we all got behind Walt Disney Studios when they had Get a Horse, which was revisiting the original Mickey Mouse cartoons. So the thing about these categories is, I don't think all 6,000 Oscar voters vote in them. I think it's just the ones that take the time, like we did, to watch these five shorts, which, by the way, aren't that short. I mean, on animated...
Some of them, yeah.
Well, I honestly expected them to be all sort of Tom and Jerry cartoon length, what used to be in these things. And some of them are quite ambitious on the animated side. And then certainly when we get to live action and documentary, I mean, these are sort of mega productions. We're saying Sanjay. I mean, almost all the experts, most of the editors, our two Australian editors, Rob and Lacuria and Matt Noble, are both saying World of Tomorrow, which I think as a group we would say is probably the most artistically impressive. So I'm kind of almost, I've got this groupthink going on, but I'm not sure that I should. Chris, you're saying Sanjay, but that's not your number one personal pick either, is it?
I'm really struggling on this one. Check my picks like Sunday morning. I may change. I do agree with you on the Pixar side of things. I think it's the most viewed one. Some people do vote without seeing these things, especially since they open it up to the mass membership without making them, sign affidavits or go see them in a theater. My theory on the Bear story, and I think that's the only two that can win here. World of Tomorrow's in third place. I don't even think it's that great. Every year after the Super Bowl, and I know that's sports and this is movies, but it's the same mentality. The commercials, USA Today and some of the other people do these instant analysis off of the numbers. People vote on their favorite commercials. Every single year, the top 2 or 3 commercials are all animal related. It's something that pulls on people's heartstrings, or it just, I don't know what it is about animals, especially when they're well done like this little animated short. It makes me really wonder if that, because it's the only one in the group that's like that, and it might win here. And also, somebody in our forums was pointing out the design of it, the look of it. You mentioned that year where Mr. Hublot won and hardly anybody had that a couple of years ago. It's got that same style to it, the animation style. So those two things together really make me wonder.
But you're not predicting it just yet.
At this moment, I mean, Marcus and I have desks next to each other. We talk ourselves into things together. So at the moment, I've got Sanjay, but I'm really struggling on this one.
Marcus, let's go to you next. The last time that Disney won here, it was Feast. It was about a doggy. But Bear, the one that we're cautioning everybody about here, is actually about a mechanical bear. He's a clockwork wind-up bear. And the thing that it doesn't have, and Mr. Hublot did have this, is it doesn't have the ending of aw, that makes it just all gooey and lovable inside. It's got a sad ending. And in the case of Feast, it had a wonderfully charming ending. And in the end of Sanjay, it is the reason I'm going with it is it's the one that has the biggest heart hug at the end, right?
Right. I agree with all of that. And first of all, Chris, you're so wrong. World of Tomorrow is genius. It's one of the best shorts I've ever seen. And if I was an Oscar voter, I would predict that to win. The thing about Bear Story is it kind of reminded me of 12 Years a Slave. He has a family, he gets kidnapped and sold into slavery, or in this case, the circus.
Oscar-winning 12 Years a Slave?
Yes. And I think the difference between this and Feast is that Feast was about an animal that was actually an animal. These ones they're basically humans that look like bears. They live in a house. They have a wife and a child. They're not really animals in that respect. But I have to go with Sanjay here because, you know, last year I was one of those people that thought The Dam Keeper would win because it was just so good and so original, and they went with the one that everyone had seen, which was Feast. So I'm not going to make that same mistake again.
Daniel, pipe in here.
Yeah, I'm playing it safe with Sanjay for now. I do think the three films we've talked about are probably the only three in this category that can win: Sanjay, Bear Story, and World of Tomorrow. I think Bear Story might resonate, not just because it's about animals and people like cute animals, but because I'm trying to think about the sort of, the kind of bleeding heart liberals that may vote for this. Maybe some of them are in PETA, and maybe some of them have issues with the circus already, and that kind of voter, which is entirely speculative, but I think that could resonate with a certain contingent. But Sanjay Super Team could also resonate, in addition to all the reasons we've discussed, as sort of an answer to the Oscars So White controversy. It's about Indian characters. It has an Indian director. So I mean, they could at least, and it's front and center. It's about that Eastern culture. So it could really do that. It could really resonate in that way. World of Tomorrow is my absolute favorite, just like for Marcus. I love this, but my issue in terms of it winning, I had it in second just because I loved it, and now I just moved it into third, but it's a close third. It's because it's such an achievement of writing that I'm not sure that they're going to give it the credit for the animation, because a lot of it is kind of like these sort of stick figure drawings, and it's not badly animated, but it has that very simple animation where it's very much about the story and the writing. So I'm not sure that'll resonate, and it's also very weird in a way that I love, but I'm not sure if it's going to have the broad enough appeal for the Academy.
It's also very cold. It doesn't have a lot of emotion to it. You don't want to hug these people.
It does from time to time. There are a couple of moments in there where you just find yourself, like there's this one moment where she talks about this man she loved and she doesn't fall in love with rocks anymore. There's like that one little moment that's really absurd, but it also has that core of emotion that I think it does, but it's not quite as overt as the other two.
Often the short with the most snob appeal does win. That was one of the things we underestimated with Mr. Hublot. But it's also, in this case, the snob appeal of it may just be too far.
Tom, you're always talking to Oscar voters and trying to find out what they're putting on their ballots, and certainly I'm always pestering you about that Best Picture preferential ballot. But what would be your sense in terms of the percentage of Oscar voters that vote in these categories? As Chris mentioned, now that they're being sent DVD screeners of all of these films, they don't have to go to a special screening.
Very few, and I think the Oscar voting this year is really skewed because of the phone app that they're voting on. We can talk about that in a separate slugfest, but what I'm hearing is an absolute revolt from the voters, because what happens is as soon as you log on to your voting app, it says start voting first thing right away. You do get an option of picking a linear or a random access view, but if you don't do anything and which no one does, it just starts going right through, and it goes right through Best Picture, for example, and there are no instructions anywhere. So you don't know, for example, for Best Picture to slide over your ranking. So what I'm finding, which could really skew the vote big time this weekend, is that people are just shoving over Best Picture, and they're not doing the ranking because they don't understand they're supposed to do it. Others, like I spoke to one voter yesterday, and she was saying, it took me 3 minutes to get that thing slid over. I'm not going to waste all my time doing the others. By the way, they're asked to rank all 8, not like 5. I was under the assumption that Best Picture was following the same preferential ballot as it does during the nomination phase, where they only rank 5. Not true. So imagine you're going through all of that and you're getting to the shorts area, right, where you are just picking one. They're just so flustered by the whole app thing, the voters that I'm speaking to, of course, who are not the most tech-savvy people in general, even though they work in the media, and should be, that I think that they're just not voting in a lot of places the way they're supposed to, because they just want to get through it and vote for the top category. That's the sense I'm getting.
Okay, yeah, so it's
accident or something.
What's that, Daniel?
So basically, like Brooklyn, like it's alphabetically near the top, so it'll win Best Picture by accident.
Yeah, Yeah, maybe so. Wouldn't that be interesting?
But this isn't their only option for voting, right?
And no, they could if they asked, they could get a paper ballot.
Right.
But you had to. I think it was one of those.
What
you had
about
to
on just a
ask.
computer?
You can again, and you can. It looks the same because it's all responsive coding. It's all mobile friendly. So you do the same thing. Look, I spoke to one guy who was a voter, and he said, "I loved the app. It was just so great." And what he was doing, which I don't think some of the other folks understood, was he was constantly going back to the main lobby screen and then going back through the categories and re-picking things, and he was spending time thoughtfully with his ballot the way you're supposed to, rather than just this terror and intimidation that they have while they're going through it. So, and then hitting submit. So he was moving his votes around and having a wonderful time doing it, but he thought it was absolutely fantastic, the app. But I don't think in general, Paul, I think you're right. I think most people skip those shorts, but that the people who do vote in them actually do see them. I can't imagine why you would vote for that if you didn't actually watch them.
Well, it'd be interesting because when we move on about just recognition, name recognition in some of the other categories. But so what's interesting is probably the kind of people that are watching them are probably the retired people that are probably a little bit older and probably are the most likely, if my father is any example, to have trouble with these apps, you know. So it'll be interesting whether they actually do, if their votes register. So we're saying as collectively, Sanjay. Well, Tom, you haven't weighed in.
Yeah, I think it's Sanjay. Clearly, it's short. It moves very fast. It's fun, and it's the father-son awe. I mean, it just what I'm observing over and over is, like with Feast winning, it's the one that just makes your heart melt. And I think that is what's interesting. And let's move on to the next category where this point that we're discussing here really is the key. And what we want to talk about here is best live action short. And this is where all of the experts at Gold Derby, all of them are not picking the one that I'm picking, which is Stutterer. And I think that in this category, there is one clear one that is the one that makes your heart melt. You know, it's about this guy who stutters and has been having this online chat room love affair with a girl who wants to meet him, and he's terrified of actually meeting her because he hasn't fessed up. And the way they resolve the drama is just so charming, and they just kind of leave it up in the air so that the optimist in you goes there, and it's just, he's very appealing. The way it's edited and presented is very appealing, and I think that will carry the day. But the actual best one by far is Shock. That's the one with two boys with a bicycle. Look at Marcus making a face. The ending is triumphant. The ending is brilliant. But it's in Albanian, and it's got subtitles and all of that. So
well, right now, but back to Stutterer, which I agree is a charming film in English. That the experts, and I'm one of them, you're one of them, are saying Ave Maria, and I do wonder if, not to take anything away from our experts, if Ava starts with an A, is it the one that they, I mean, was it as simple as that, and did it become a self-fulfilling prophecy?
Well, tell me why you're picking Ave Maria, and I'll tell you why I'm not picking it. It is the favorite of the experts, right?
But I'm not sure. I think I fell victim to the mentality of it's leading in the odds, therefore that's the one I should go for, before I really thought about it. What it does have going for it is the setting, you know, in Israel, Jewish versus Arab Palestinian, and there is a charm to it, and certainly I'm mindful of those nuns. I can't help but think of at the end of The Sound of Music, you know, where they've disabled the Nazis' car, and it had that same kind of feeling. Very charming. But Marcus is chomping at the bit here. So what?
And before we hand this over to Marcus, I want you all to mute your microphone when we're not talking because we're getting feedback here. Go ahead, Marcus.
Okay. You know, unlike the animated short one where I think only 3 can win, I could really see any of these 5 winning. That's what makes this so tough. I do have Ave Maria in 5th place. But I could still see it winning based on what Paul just said. My personal favorite is Everything Will Be Okay. I was just gripped to that. I could not look away. It was 30 minutes long, and I think that's too long to be a short. But I could not look away. It was so well done, well edited, well paced. The acting was great. I don't know how they found that little girl. But I have it in third place. I have Tom's favorite, Shock, in second. But I think he's right about Stutterer, and it's the cutesy one. It's the romance one. Men will love it, and women will vote for it as well. And that's one of the differences. I don't see women voting for any of these others. Maybe Day One. Day One was the one about the woman giving birth during the war.
Daniel, you mentioned that you'd like the same one as Marcus.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard what everybody else thought about these shorts until now, the live action ones. Everything Will Be Okay when I watched it, and it's always interesting. I pay attention to what order I watch these things in to see if that influences my opinions. This was the third one I watched. I watched it after Ave Maria and after Shock, and Everything Will Be Okay was absolutely my favorite. It's Kramer versus Kramer meets Room. It's so good. It's so gradual, the way it teases out the tension where you don't know necessarily what's going on, and then because you're put in this child's point of view, she doesn't know exactly what's going on, and then gradually you sort of get, you understand what her father is trying to do, and she becomes aware of it, and she becomes more frightened, and it's not heavy in the sense that, like The Revenant is heavy, or that some of these documentary shorts that we'll talk about are heavy. It's serious and it's sad, but it's not overwhelmingly so. I think it does have some of that same appeal that Room has, and I just thought it was fantastic. I wasn't as impressed by Shock. I thought that was, I don't have the contextual knowledge about that conflict to sort of have to know about it, and then it goes to a sad place that felt almost obligatory. It's like, okay, well, here's here's more sadness in this category. Ave Maria, I thought, was good. It stands out because it's the funniest one, or it's really the only funny one. Stutterer is charming, but it's not really a laugh riot. Ave Maria, it stands out in that way. So that's why I have it still in number one. I don't want to keep it there, because I don't feel that strongly about it, and I don't know if the Academy will feel as strongly about it. But if I move it out, I don't know what to put in its place.
Well, here's my problem with Ave Maria. I just think it's obnoxious. I think everybody looks terrible in it. Why would if the assumption that our experts are making is that because it takes place on the left bank of it, and these are Israelis, and we have a big Jewish vote within the Academy, that's a good thing. My God, these people look terrible. These obnoxious people who are grabbing this car and treating these nuns abominably. The nuns look silly and stupid, and I can endure all of that because it has this nice silliness that you're talking about. But the finale is not satisfying. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to suffer through all these awful, stupid people, then I want at least there's be some great story payoff, and I didn't see that. Chris, we haven't heard from you yet. What do you think?
I only liked one out of these five, so it became easy for me to just say, okay, that's the one I think will win, and that's Stutterer. I think one thing we haven't mentioned on it compared to the other four, I think the other four to me are quite depressing. It's our old apple and a barrel of oranges theory of the one that kind of sticks out as being very different than the other four. And the one thing I'll say about everybody, experts especially, but I wouldn't say this about most categories of the Oscars, but these three that we're talking about today, people quite often, I know I do, like when we do the Country Music Awards, you look to the left when you're about to drag over your picks, you're like, I don't know anything about this category, so I'll just go in the order that they are in the prediction center. And I think we've self-perpetuated this Ave Maria thing because it came over when the Oscar nominations were announced, it whittled it down from 15 to 5, and that was on top then. So it always had the best odds, maybe because it started with an A, like you mentioned. So I think people just started dragging over these things in order. I don't think people really could give you a reason why they're picking that. Most people haven't seen these like we just watched them.
But I remember, I remember somebody doing it, I can't remember who, did an analysis of, I think it was the Emmy nominations, and how they were disproportionately in the first half of the alphabet. Because
that's true when you've got 100 to 500 names on a ballot. I don't think it really matters. Some university student out there ought to do this. I think when you're down to like 15 names, which were there for nominations, or 5 like it is now, I don't think the alphabetical matters as much.
Well, now what about day one? I mean, that sort of had a Hurt Locker feel about it, a Best Picture winner.
That's reason enough to get rid of that one.
Wow, Chris is peppery today. This is not...
That's the worst Oscar-winning Best Picture in my lifetime.
What if Mad Max wins, though?
Oh, okay.
We'll shoot to the top.
Yeah. So, Tom, what about day one? I mean, it's got a political message. It's an American Film Institute project. It's got a woman at the center of it.
It just makes us look so bad, Americans. I mean, I mean, how can we drag this guy away from this, his mud home as a terrorist when this domestic tragedy is taking place there? And it's just we're bullies. The Americans look terrible. She, of course, comes across heroically, the American helper there, the translator. But I just think we're also disgusted by the U.S. involvement in the Mideast, and there's nobody looks heroic except her, or at least sympathetic, and the whole thing is just full of so many complicated, horrible emotions of these people. Even if you accept them as him as a bomb builder, which he probably is, the uncle guy in there whose wife is having the baby. It's just, again, you feel for it. It just goes to a place I don't want to go to. And I think that's what a lot of people feel. Anybody else agree with that?
I'm not sure I mean, I watched this one last, and after watching the others, I sort of ended up ranking it in last place, just because it's, I mean, I didn't think it was bad, and I don't even think the Americans come off worse in it than we usually do. But yeah, I don't see it winning. I mean, there's, with that kind of tragedy sort of thing, shock is more effective, and it doesn't have the thriller or the sympathy, the empathy aspect of everything will be okay. It doesn't have the humor of Ave Maria or the charm of Stutterer. I just looking at this list of nominees, it would be the last one I would expect to win. But not because it's bad necessarily, not because I think Americans come off badly at first, and then in the midst of this this tragedy that's unfolding with this dangerous childbirth, both sides become sort of reconciled with each other for at least that moment, and I think it becomes a little bit more sympathetic.
Okay, interesting thoughts. Let's move on to the really toughest one of all to pick. I think I feel fairly confident about my picks in the other two categories, but this one for Best Documentary Feature, I'm the only one picking whatever I'm picking, and I'll get to my choice first.
Documentary short. You said feature.
Oh, sorry, documentary short. Thank you, Paul.
Because they run so long, you think they're features.
They really do, including the one that, is it Chris and Marcus are picking here? Yeah, this Claude Lanzmann. Who wants to start, Chris or Marcus, to defend that?
Okay. Like you said, this is a tough category. I think everybody that's going down this Body Team 12 track, they just don't. I mean, it's only what 12 minutes. They don't reward documentary shorts that are this short. I mean, they're looking more in that 30-minute range. You can't find one that I can recall on any of these years that's been that short. So I think that's not it. Anytime I see Holocaust and Oscar, in the same sentence in terms of a nominee, I'll let my ears perk up, because they really like to go that route when they can. My only concern.
But they didn't go that route. The Shoah itself wasn't nominated.
What was that, 40-something years ago? I mean, that's a whole different group of voters. If you look over the last few years, my problem with it in terms of just watching it is it's a documentary about a guy that shot a documentary and includes lots of clips from that documentary. So I guess these new people that are nominated now get credit in some way for showing those clips. It rankles me a little bit, just the fact that a documentary about a documentary could win here, but apparently this guy's going to be there, Claude Lanzmann, and not the voters know that, but I can just picture that moment where he gets up from his seat and walks down the aisle, and he's getting a standing ovation, and just it's the way I think it's going to go here, and I don't have a better explanation than that.
Well, I don't think that's an adequate explanation, because this whole idea that the Holocaust stuff always wins. There have been, my brain is not thinking of them. In the last several years, last 5 or 6 years, when I've employed that thinking with Holocaust-themed nominees, I've lost. And then when you think of such things as Israel's never won Best Foreign Film, I believe that's true, right? Daniel, you know that. Is that true?
I don't think it has. I don't know for sure.
Right. I mean, when you have a Schindler's List, Life is Beautiful, these kinds of things, yes, it happens. The problem with this Claude Lanzmann thing is it is so boring. My God, it is just, you want to gouge your eyes out, and there's very little Holocaust footage in it. It's not really about the Holocaust. It's listening to this man babble for more than 30 minutes just about, oh, I faced a tough decision of should I be true to myself, and all these gushing generalities, pointless, boring.
So you want more Holocaust?
If it gave me Holocaust, I would have been fine with
it. but if some people that don't see any of these vote, and they see the word Shoah, which you have to remember, Steven Spielberg, after the Schindler's List success, created that Shoah Foundation to get the stories told. That's very much on the radar of a lot of Oscar voters. My only concern would be some people that didn't watch it are going to vote for it because of that.
That's possible.
Yeah, and actually, I was on the Body Team 12 track for this whole time, and Chris is saying, and actually what Paul is saying actually convinced me to move Shoah up to first place. If it didn't win Best Documentary Feature, anyone who knows that, and I don't know how many people in the Academy would know that, this is their chance to get Claude Lanzmann on their stage for that achievement, even though he's not the winner. I agree with Tom. This was my least favorite of these 5 documentaries, just because it's a film about a filmmaker talking about his film, showing clips from his film. There's just nothing to it that's especially new or compelling, especially at 40 minutes. But then you also have the fact that it's a film about a filmmaker. The Academy will already resonate, that will already resonate with the Academy in a way that, like Argo does. Anything about Hollywood, they, at least in recent years, they've been gravitating towards. And then, the Holocaust aspect, and, without knowing what else to go with, I think I might have to pick Claude Lanzmann now.
Well, and to that point about, over in documentary feature, I think it's pretty much accepted that Amy is the likeliest winner there. And so I think that you've seen in the last few years with Oscar voters that they're voting in these categories for, I'm going to say, populist fare, something where they recognize a name, that sort of thing. But Tom, you're predicting something that very few experts, none of the other editors are predicting. So tell us what you're predicting and why.
Yeah, Pete Hammond made his predictions yesterday, and he's on A Girl in the River too. Haven't talked to him yet today. We're doing a video later today, and I'm going to ask him about that. But I think that A Girl in the River is just the only choice here. If I was actually voting for, again, the one that has the most emotional engagement. This documentary is so powerful, it is like Making of a Murderer, in the sense that when you watch it, and then the next thing happens, and the next thing happens, you go, oh my God, oh my, and your outrage builds collectively as you watch it, to the point where you're just on the edge of your seat shrieking at the screen as you watch it. And then of course, the terrible finale of her resignation at the end. It is the one that gets you rooting for a main character. And I keep thinking, all right, well, there are 30% women in the Academy. If we actually have 30% of them voting here, if I were a woman, I would just, first of all, I would respond to that if you want to just kind of think strategically here. But also, I just think it's the best by far. It was really how they got these families members to get a father and an uncle who tried to kill this girl, how they got them, the cooperation of them to do this documentary. It was stunning, but of course they did, and all of the hypocrisies and lunacy of human nature comes through here. and the cultural divide. I was absolutely absorbed by it, and I'm leery now of picking it because I'm emotionally involved in it. It really grabbed me. So I now, as an awards pundit, need to step back a little between now and Sunday and saying, am I responding to my own emotionalism over this thing, or is Claude Lanzmann the better pick? It's certainly not the better documentary, but as you're saying, with Shoah in the title and the person's name in the title and people not watching it, do voters just automatically check it off?
And I would say, in terms of emotion, Chow, the film about Agent Orange in Vietnam. I mean, that's
my God. It's unwatchable. It's so powerful and good and honest. You can't. I watched it all the way through, just gasping, thinking, we did this to these poor children as a nation. It's hard to accept the guilt of it and then actually vote for it.
Well, or is that why you do vote for it? I mean, that's the one. I was on the body team, but now I think I want to move Chow into number one. But would that be a mistake?
I think the topic is so repulsive. It's like the killing. What was it called? The Art of Killing. As powerful as that was as a documentary, last year or the year before, it was so repulsive. The whole thing was that you just can't embrace it and the way to vote for it. Short Body 12, whatever that one is. Body Bag 12, whatever.
Body Team 12.
Body Team 12 is very good. I agree with Chris. It's probably too short, but I think that's a good thing about it. And what I love, the ending, it has a wonderfully uptick ending. Let us hope that we are helping our country, Liberia. And in the history books, it's like an anthem of people who are fighting ignorance and tribalism and danger and ruralism and all these things in order to help their countrymen through this Ebola crisis. It's very sweet and gets you in and out of there and ends with an uptick. So I think it's really in the race, but I don't think it goes far enough. I think it's just one thing. You see, for as long as that documentary lasts, you see these people just putting on protective medical gear, taking it off, fighting with the villagers, doing it again, and finally the emotional uptick at the end. I'm not sure it's enough to win.
We didn't get to know her at all. Like, compare her to the one in The Girl in the River. We didn't find out till the end of the 12 minutes that she even had a son. We should have followed her in her daily life, in addition to what she does, in her work life. I think that was the big issue. I didn't connect to her at all, and I really wanted to.
Right.
Yeah, I think I had the same reaction to Girl in the River that Tom did. Like in this category, like in all of these categories, my favorite documentary was not the one I was predicting. And in this case, there were two in this category that really knocked me out, and it was Girl in the River and one we haven't talked about, Last Day of Freedom, which is animated, which helps it stand out from the other ones. But they both have that sense of you can't believe it outrage to it. And they both felt a lot shorter than they were, which I think is a good sign. Like Claude Lanzmann, I felt like I was watching that for 5 hours. And The Girl in the River is 40 minutes, and it felt like it went by in 10 minutes. It just flew by. The story is so compelling. And The Last Day of Freedom is just one guy talking, so I was surprised that I think it's around 30 minutes that it went so quickly, at least in terms of how it felt, and it felt so compelling. So it's those two films that I love the most. But since I'm not confident about either of them, so I don't know how to predict this category confidently.
Well, see, that's why I love having these conversations, is because you all talk me into things. I think I'm going to switch over to Girl in the River. I didn't enjoy it very much. I don't know why. I wanted to. It was the one I had in first there for a while. As you were talking, I looked up the lady's name because I remember when I was building the prediction center, the lady that directed Girl in the River just won 4 years ago for Saving Face in the same category. So she's already proven she can win an Oscar for her documentary shorts. So maybe I'll go that route. This one's this one to me is a tougher category than the other two.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm tempted after this discussion to switch to Claude Lanzmann. I don't know what to do, but I'm going to go between either Girl in the River or Claude Lanzmann.
Well, if people like it sounds like the four of you, watched that and were disappointed or thought it
awful.
Felt really
it's not
long.
just bad. It's
let's just think about the people that don't just mark their ballots but actually watch these things. If they were disappointed, it's not going to win.
I enjoyed it, but hearing that you guys all didn't like it is causing me to re-question it. I have it in first, and I have Girl in the River in second, but I may do a switch here. But how, if there was one of these documentaries that was actually positive and uplifting, it would win hands down, because these are all so hard to watch, so negative. And
I mean, Amy is uplifting compared to these movies. It's so punishing, this category. Everything you hear about why people don't like documentaries, how serious and important and depressing they are, which they aren't always, and they don't have to be. It's just this category in a nutshell. It's just like, do you want to be? It's like watching Inside Out if the only character were Samus.
So we don't know what we're doing here. We're all thinking of changing our predictions, and we don't feel strongly like we do in the other categories.
I feel strongly for Sanjay, though. I feel like that's gonna win.
Yeah, I feel strongly for Sanjay, and I could see Stutterer losing, to Shoki or to, what was the other one?
Ave Maria.
Ave Maria. I think that could win just because it made them giggle. It has a heart because it's silly. It has a different kind of heart. But these are always the hardest, because when you're sitting there on Oscar night and you hear the winner's name, don't you all, and it's not what you pick, don't you all just kick yourself saying, I should have known that. Why didn't I know that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, who did know it last year was Daniel, because he got all these categories right.
I did what we're all talking ourselves out of doing, which was just going with the front runners last year. Because I had not seen them last year, and I did not want to I didn't want to lose any ground to anyone else by trying to be clever and pick something else and have the front runner win and lose ground to other predictors. So I just went with the front runners. I'll be right or wrong with the front runners, and this year I'm tempted to do the same.
So what are the front runners? They're Sanjay,
Body Team, and Ave Maria.
Okay.
Sanjay is a solid bet. Body Team 12, I think of all the front runners, that's the one I think is least likely to win, just because it's so short and doesn't really have time to. Ave Maria I'm keeping for now, but my problem with Ave Maria is that if I move it down, I don't know what to move up.
Well, who does know are the people watching this, because they'll make their predictions, and you can keep making your predictions right up until the Oscars start, and those odds are going to keep changing. And so Daniel and I will be the last ones to jump on whatever bandwagon seems to be leaving the station. So please, everyone, update your predictions. We'll get those green arrows showing what's up. We'll get the red arrows showing us what's down. And really, you need to do it not just for you to win the contest, but for Daniel and I to win bragging rights.
Or for Chris, Marcus, or I to take down you scoundrels, you and Daniel, who are just winning too many of these things. It's time you guys got humbled, right, Marcus and Chris?
Oh yeah. I just want to beat my own score. I don't care about you guys. I just want to do better than I did last year.
What, you want to do better than 30%?
No, I got 71%.
But he remembers.
I was just looking at last year's on these three categories, and like Daniel said, all three were collectively for Gold Derby the predictions that actually won. So I wonder if, we talked about the self-fulfilling, the things. I wonder if some voters come into Gold Derby going, I don't know, let me just see what's being predicted. So they're going to go with the front runners that we have too.
Well, how many times, hundreds of times, do I hear from people all over the place, oh, I won my office pool, thank you, Gold Derby, I just go and pick whatever the odds tell me to pick, and like an idiot, I'm going off on limbs, and so are you guys, and we're not winning our own website's predictions, because everyone else is out there is listening to the group think, which is probably smarter than the individual think. Because we overthink these things. But
I do think, unlike last year, I think there were clear and obvious choices in all three categories. I don't think that's the case this year. I think that between us we've made cases for 8 or 10 of these nominees to win these three categories. So I think we will have to turn it over to the collective wisdom of our users.
God help us all. Well, thank you guys. Good luck with your predictions. I hope we've helped you and not just made it all the more confounding, which it is, but these are the Oscars, and these are the hardest categories to predict, so good luck to you.